Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. I'm Glazer of the Snap Judgments podcast, and before we go any further, like and sub for the best Marvel Snap takes every single weekday. First and foremost, before we do anything else, last week we gave away a season pass. Our winner is Boris Soldier NYC. Please reach out in the comments or send a Twitter DM to claim your free season pass. We'll be giving away another season pass this week. All you have to do is like and sub. Don't miss the video where it's announced. Do what the video says, and you can win your own Hitmonkey season pass. If you'd prefer, if you have Hitmonkey, you're more than welcome to put this season pass off until the next season pass card comes out. Doesn't really matter to me which I give you, as long as I'm helping people enjoy the season pass in Marvel Snap and then helping support this game through it. The big Snap Pass Open, excuse me, I know how to speak once in a while. The big Snap.fan Open happened this weekend on Twitch. You've got to go check out the Snap.fan's new Twitch. It'll be Default Dan, phenomenal player who organized this whole ginormous tournament, set up all the gorgeous graphics, and made everything go smoothly. He'll be streaming over on that Snap.fan Twitch page pretty regularly. So make sure you go check that out. It's going to be awesome. I was lucky enough to do the post show with Default Dan and It's Guest Gaming, both of whom you can find on those names on YouTube. I'll have all that stuff in the description. Make sure you check them out. But also, when I did that post show, I was lucky enough to talk to two of the smartest minds in the game about Marvel Snap. I watched basically the whole tournament, and I learned an absolute ton about Marvel Snap competitive play, about how you should play in a tournament, what you're looking to do. Tomorrow's the patch note, so I know you're looking for the patch note. So tomorrow's video will be early, so that like if you're checking later in the day and you only care about patch notes, I understand that video is not going to be for you. But the lessons you learn in a tournament, how to play in a tournament, what to do, will be evergreen. So I'm going to talk about that stuff tomorrow. Today we're going to look at the top 8 decks of the tournament. Take a look at what won, what was good about it, what was bad about it, and how it played. And there are 4 Shuri lists in the top 8, which is honestly less than a lot of recent tournaments. So we're going to start by looking at those 4 Shuri decks. We've got this deck right here by Quality Dark. It is running the exact bog standard list with the Polaris in it. Some versions of this change Polaris for various cards. Some versions change Captain Marvel for various cards. I believe almost every other version of this deck is going to have all the other same cards. For example, this one subs in Claw. Claw was one of the big surprises in this meta. He showed up in an absolute ton of decks. We're going to talk about what that means and why as we talk about the tournament later on when we talk about things we learned. But Claw is a really good card at spreading power in an unexpected way. He's also a really good surprise way to beat cards like Doom. Or if you get hit with the surprise Sandman, he'll, after you drop a big thing, give you another lane pretty well. We've also got America Chavez in this as the swing card. America Chavez increasing the consistency of Shuri. This is Jinsook's version of the deck. Broad, Marvel Snap News over at Twitter, I'm sure you follow him, I'm sure you know him, is again running the bog standard version, except the swing card in this, got Captain Marvel, the other swing card is Doom. Doom, again, offering a similar thing to Claw at 1 more cost. I think Doom is probably better than Claw in this deck, but I do like the America Chavez, so a bit of here, a bit there. America Chavez obviously gives you 1 less turn to draw your giant combo pieces, right? But seeing Shuri on 4 is so important for this deck that there is some value to it. And, is that all 4? No. 1 more Shuri 0. This one actually came in 4th place. This is a top 4 one from Swen. You can see that this deck is running again, we're back to the straight Polaris Captain Marvel as the swing spot in this version. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think any version of this deck is particularly better than the others. I think that depending on matchups, each of these cards is going to have value in some games and lose you some others. That's totally fine. I'm not going to spend long on this because, well, hopefully by Tuesday, these decks don't really exist in a recognizable form or fashion. So let's take a look at the last of the top 8 decks we haven't talked about. Last of the top 8 decks is a standard a standard Thanos Lockjaw. The current Thanos Lockjaw decks are running a Lockjaw package with something like Psylocke to help ramp out a 5, along with Killmonger and Death. They're using Wave as an almost turn 5 pseudo Sandman, and they've got Leech, Vision, Arrow, some combination of 5s that you can ramp into using um, Psylocke and the Time Stone, and then Shang-Chi to kill stuff. It ends up being really good this way. It's a really smooth deck. It is incredible in tournament play, and it has the added benefit of beating most other Thanos builds. This is the end of the standard list for at least the next two. If you're just looking to hit Infinite, I strongly urge you to take a look at this deck. It's very unlikely the nerfs this season, unless they finally, please Lord, hit Leech. Unless they finally hit Leech, it is very unlikely that anything change in this deck. And if nothing changes in this deck, I think this is probably, or a version of this that we'll get to soon, will probably be the best deck in the meta. The key here is that if it pops out of Lockjaw or goes into Lockjaw, Doom can then pop out a big card, Vision can pop out of a Lockjaw and then move out of the way. So on and so forth. There's lots of extra options. Shang-Chi going into a Lockjaw kills something, gives you something else, etc. It's a good deck. It's a very, very good deck. This is not my favorite version of Thanos, as longtime viewers will know, but it is probably the most effective. The arguable biggest surprise of the top 4 is this move deck. This move deck takes the move package. I've been swearing that this package is really strong. This looks very similar to the version created by Cozy over at Cozy Gamer ages ago that he took to Infinite. It's running a couple of cool extra pieces, but the majority of the deck is, in fact, just that Cozy deck. So this deck has a lot of cool things to do early. Obviously, the move package, if you get the pieces in the right order, can be a lot of power before turn 4. You end up moving something into a Craven. Craven is immediately a 2/4. If there's 2 cards there, you've got a 2/4 and a 2/6, along with Iron Fist. Human Torch moved twice is a 1/8. That's absolutely insane. Again, if you do that on top of a Craven, so much the better. 2/4 is one of the better rates in the game. A 1/8 is bonkers, but a 3/8 or a 3/13 are also both incredibly powerful. All you really need is one move to get this going, and it's got 2 different early game move pieces. Either of those, you get one of those 2 off, if not both, and you have a lot of early game power, ensuring yourself priority, ensuring yourself a lead. In order to amplify that lead, the main card here is Spider-Man. You lock off one of those locations, and you've just won it, right? You've got more power in that location, and that's just fine. That is over. The other combo piece for locking down stuff is Shuri, largely into Vision. Vision moving around as a 5/14 is really, really, really hard to answer. You've got Shang in case they're doing Shuri shenanigans so that you can answer them. And you've got your Heimdall and Magneto as your potential last turn plays. Heimdall is especially dangerous if you Shuri pass Heimdall, or if you ended up playing Shuri on 5. That 16 power Heimdall often wins a lane, and if you're shoving, I don't know, let's say 8 power along with a potential 6 to 10 power, along with potential 2 to 4 power, over to another lane, that's a lane your opponent might be ready for, but that amount of power is so dangerous that when you add that 16, because Shuri, it's crazy strong. Same idea with the 24 power Magneto, although 12 is so much more than 8 that it's really, really powerful. There's also the added benefit here that Shang-Chi doesn't hit Heimdall, and Vision is only hit by it with Shuri, but can move around so as to avoid the danger of Shang. That all these combos make this one of the best move decks. I don't expect this deck to exist in 2 days. I think the Shuri nerf will likely kill this version of it, but look, if you're good at math, if you're fast at math, I think more than being good at math, move is really, really great. Move is especially really great in battle mode where your opponent has to account for so many things. Figuring out whether you're going to Heimdall or not and where the power goes based on that Heimdall coming or not is a way to win cubes. You have that information, your opponent doesn't. They're left guessing, and at that point, they either have to stick around and 50-50, or run. Whereas you know what you're going to do, and you can accurately, more or less, read what their power output is and where. This is one of the best archetypes for battle mode if your math is quick. If you miscount by 2, by 1, by 4, please don't miscount by 4. If you are slow at math, you're always going to struggle with this. I'm not going to lie, early in the game, a lot of what I do is when I play move, and I'm pretty good with move. I win 55, 56% of my games with move, which is on the like regular good deck for me. Um, what I tend to do when I'm playing move decks is I look for just the most power I can early in the game while trying to keep an eye on moving things right in case I want to Heimdall later. And then very often I don't end up Heimdalling because your opponent tries to play around it, and if you can make them do something that they're not expecting, that's really, really powerful. The idea of Shuri Heimdall is that they can't necessarily answer 16 power in a lane of your choosing. Okay, next up is my favorite deck of the tournament, the second place deck. The second place deck is this amazing What Am I deck from What Am I? It's a monkey sort of bounce deck. I call this deck Double She-Hulk. I think the bounce is nice. The bounce is fundamentally here to make Hitmonkey cheaper and so as to play on the last turn with as many other cards as possible. It's got a little bit of extra control synergy with Iceman, a little bit of extra control synergy with Hood and Demon, but for the most part, the bounce is here as an enabler to get a better last turn She-Hulk. Um, Moon Girl and Quinjet are still really good here. Sometimes you just want to eat Quinjet if you're not seeing Moon Girl. But if you do see Moon Girl, She-Hulk can still cost 0 because her cost energy doesn't have a minimum. So she still gets down to 0 with that Moon Girl. So a 1 and a 0 cost She-Hulk on the last turn of the game, along with ideally a 1 cost Hitmonkey, and another 1 cost Hitmonkey. You can play even all of that with a 3 cost Shang-Chi if you Moon Girled it. You can play it with multiple demons. You can play it with a Carnage that has been duplicated to eat some stuff, to eat Iceman, Quinjet, who's now useless on the last turn, Sunspot if he didn't get anything, Beast if he didn't get bumped. All of these different combos, or Mysterio clones, obviously, all these different combos are incredible. During the tournament while watching, as soon as this deck came up, I decided to play it for about a half hour between rounds and immediately climb 2 ranks. This deck is absolutely stellar. It's even got a little bit of game against Sandman. Not great, but if you can read the Sandman coming, this deck can often go off a turn early. Sorry, my alarm to remind myself to make the video just went off. There's just awesome, awesome combos here. I also cannot stress enough. I think the best thing the move deck does, outside of maybe bouncing bouncing Black Widow is strong in the other bounce decks because giving them 1,000 uh, 0 cost nonsense to fill their board, preventing their draw, and then when they're trying to spam their board with Hitmonkey decks is really, really strong. But Iceman is sweet as well to bounce. It wrecks their hand. Just 2 Iceman plays will often win a game. As someone who played a lot of Sarah, I swear Iceman always hits Sarah. I'm aware that that can't be the case, but it sure feels that way. There are numerous decks. Shuri that suddenly costs 5, Red Skull that suddenly costs 6, so on. All these things are straight up game winning, and having 2 shots at it is really sweet. Try and make sure you bounce Iceman. And then if you're trying to look for an extra 2 power from Hitmonkeys to make Iceman a 1/4, whatever, on that last turn, strongly consider playing it again on 5 to screw up the opponent's plans. It's a really, 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 really great card. Sunspot's hit or miss here. If you're going to do the She-Hulk skip, Sunspot is absolutely amazing. And if you're not, then he often ends up Carnage bait. That's perfectly fine. There are also certain locations that really benefit Sunspot, right? Like if you can get 2 Sunspots and every time you skip, both are getting energy. That's really strong. Like a game earlier in the week, I had some reason to get Moon Girl out on 3 and then was able to play double Sunspot on 4 and then pass the rest of 4 and pass the rest of 5. And it was just a game-winning play. There's an absolute ton to do here that's really, really cool and really, really strong. The deck has an answer to lots of things. It very rarely has enough power on the board until the very last turn to be vulnerable to Shang-Chi, while it has its own Shang-Chi to answer something that's especially fun to do early in the game. It's got Carnage to deal with all the junk deck nonsense. I'm starting to think that it's just worth running Carnage for that at this point. If you're playing Hood, who's one of the better cards in the game anyway, running Carnage is starting to be just a viable thing. Also, Mysterio takes up a lot of space, and you have no way to really pump clones, so eating a clone is a good way to get some value there. All around, this deck just synergizes beautifully. Um, People are going to say, oh my god, a bounce deck in the top four. It's a deck that does bounce, but this is a double She-Hulk deck. The danger with double She-Hulk decks was that they had to run something like Devil Dino before because they didn't have a second way to put a massive amount of power on the board late if they didn't see Moon Girl and She-Hulk, right? Um, this version has Hit Monkey to take care of that problem. There's some argument for Titania in this deck because Titania is another card that is just stellar on the last turn. If you can double her, 1/5 is a crazy good stat line. Um, but the deck is so successful right now, I don't think it really needs it. If there are further nerfs or Quinjet and further testing proves to not be really good, and again, thus far Quinjet has been very good. But if Quinjet turns out not to be necessary, to me, that's Titania's spot for this deck. All right. The winning deck, I think, is just going to be the meta deck. It's the same as the first deck we looked at, or very similar to the first deck we looked at. It is Thanos Lockjaw. This version has some slight differences from the first version. First version is right over here. There we go. First version is right over here. This one doesn't run Arrow and Vision. Instead, it runs two different 5-costers. It runs Kang and Devil Dinosaur. I believe the decks are identical other than that. But those are two quite prominent changes. First off, Devil Dinosaur as a 5 is bigger than most 6s. That's obviously got extreme value, right? Especially if you get it out on 4, if you've got to protect it, if it pops up. It's relatively safe for most things, and it is crazy, crazy, crazy strong. Everyone should by this point know that Devil Dinosaur as a pull 1 card is one of the stronger cards in the game. Great. The other key change is Kang. Kang is one of, again, the straight up better battle mode cards. It's it's going to be one of the better conquest cards. Those I snap on Kang late games, which force your opponent to retreat or stay in. It's such power to be able to do that at will. All right. The other thing this deck has going for it is it obviously has the Killmonger, Kill the Stones, Wave on 5 into Death and another thing. It's also got the She-Hulk and another thing play as well because, well, if you wave and nothing else, then your She-Hulk is going to be cheap enough. It is possible, though unlikely, that you can Death She-Hulk and something else with this. You're much more likely to be able to do one or the other, but having both of those plays along with a Doom, a Thanos, a Shang-Chi, a Devil Dino open are incredible. This is, in my personal opinion, the best deck in the game. I think this deck usually beats Shuri when piloted at a high level. I think that the second Shuri is gone, a version of this just becomes the best. Wave on 5 fundamentally shuts down all your most bounce decks, not necessarily the She-Hulk ones, but most bounce decks get completely shut down. But if there's a leech that came earlier through the absolutely absurd Lockjaw play, or a ramp from Psylocke or the Time Stone, well, that works as well as an insane way to shut down those Hit Monkey decks. They have to get their hit. If leech happens on 4, it's fundamentally impossible for them to have their Hit Monkey stuff set up. When it happens on 5, is people who've played the deck a lot know you can often, if you read that Sandman coming, or if leech is going to happen on 5, you can just read it coming and then just drop a bunch of cards the turn before and then play your like America Chavez the last turn and still steal the game. If leech and Sandman happen on turn 4, these decks have no hope. They're just straight up dead. And this deck is hyper built to get leech out on turn 4 because it's got 3 different ways to do so. It's got your Lockjaw combo, your Psylocke combo, and your Time Stone combo. All get leech out early, which is like snap before then. If your opponent stays in and gets leeched, you're winning 2 cubes every time. Kang means if you don't see that combo, the second you see Kang, whether it be on 5 or otherwise, you get that immediate combo. You can throw Kang into Lockjaw to see what the RNG gods are going to give you as far as your next card. Crazy, crazy amount of combos in this deck, crazy amount of power you can put on the board with one of the best decks in Marvel, Snap. All right, that's it for today's video. Please join me again tomorrow where we will take a look at what I learned from the tournament about the mode in general. I feel like we don't talk enough about gameplay in Marvel Snap, so tomorrow's video is going to be all about gameplay and deck building decisions and all that good stuff. And then tomorrow night, we'll be recording the Snap Judgments podcast where we're going to break down the patch of Tuesday evening. Right after it happens, the episode will be up Wednesday. We hopefully have our boy J Hugs joining us for it. If not, we'll have another great guest, but we're really looking forward to having J Hugs join us because one of my favorite people and Marvel Snap creators in this game. That's it for today. Please like and sub. We really appreciate you watching. See you tomorrow for another Snap Take.